Hello, everyone who are just joining. Welcome to the session. We'll be starting in about 1 minute. I'm just waiting for people to kind of flow into the session. All right, I think we'll get started, and that those who want to join us, they'll kind of jump in as we go. So again, thank you everyone for joining for today's session, which is the Wellness Part 2 event series being on petitions, grievances, and appeals. If you joined us a few weeks ago when we talked about the ethical behavior policy, this is kind of related to that series from the Graduate Student Association. So let's get started. So before I introduce myself and before we jump into all of this information, I just want to kind of make a disclaimer that the main takeaway from this session is mostly just to don't hesitate to reach out to the GSA for help, because what we're going to go through today is a bit kind of detail intensive, and the policies are there to help students and us, but they are quite lengthy and they're quite dependent on what the scenario is. So they are confusing, to be completely honest with you, and that's why I'm here, and that's why other members of the GSA are here. We're here to help you. So again, the main takeaway is if you have any questions about these policies that we're going to talk about today, or the forms you might have to fill out, or if an issue even pertains to a specific policy, reach out to us. Okay, so to give a bit of an introduction, my name is Ashley Ryan, and I'm the current Graduate Student Association Student Wellness Coordinator. Under wellness, I also do a lot of advocacy work. So in a lot of cases, when you contact the GSA office looking for a one-on-one advising appointment, many times you'll be directed to me to set that up. And so so I am here to help you. And if you would like to contact me directly for any questions pertaining to this presentation or any of the policies, or looking for information on resources on campus, you can contact me at gsa-wellness@uwaterloo.ca. All right, so moving right into policy 70 specifically. So policy 70 looks at petitions and grievances. So right now I'm just going to quickly talk about the policy in general, and then I'll kind of break it down into what the petitions are and what the grievances are, because they are different, and sometimes scenarios count as either or, sometimes specific situation is specific to petitions, some of their grievances. So we will talk about all that, not to worry. So in general, this policy is based on academic freedom and procedural fairness. So in the scenario where you get a grade on an assignment and you think that it is completely unfair, this is kind of the policy that you would look at to go through that process of getting that grade looked at again for it to be fair. So under this policy, students are entitled to have matters addressed fairly and expeditiously. So again, like I was saying, if you think a process is unfair at the university, this would be the process. And it also means that you are entitled to have this kind of dealt with in a efficient and, for lack of a better word, speedy way. So for example, if you are going through this policy and you point out that something was done that was unfair to you, it shouldn't take half a year to get the issue resolved. You are entitled to get it done, handled fairly quickly at the university. In reality, a lot of these processes can take months, but if you are still sitting with an issue when it's 2 years in or something like that, that is totally not okay. And if that is the scenario that you're in, then please reach out to us and we can help you. So you're also entitled to being accompanied by a support person to any meeting with administrators. So for example, if you have a meeting coming up with your associate dean, and you want someone to kind of sit in that meeting to kind of witness what's happening and be there for you, you are entitled to have someone sit in on that meeting with you. And if you would like, you can contact us and someone from the GSA can sit in on those meetings with you. So you are still entitled to participate in a petition or grievance proceedings without reprisal or threat of reprisal for doing so. So basically, you should be able to go through these policies and should be able to file petitions and grievances without facing a threat of being kicked out of your program or something like that. You should also be able to have matters heard by those who are not sitting in judgment of their own actions or decisions. That means if you have an issue, let's say, that's coming up with your supervisor or a specific course instructor, then that course instructor or that supervisor is not going to be the one that is overseeing your petition and grievance, because that would be completely unfair. And lastly, the decisions that are made during these processes are based on a balance of probabilities with consideration given to consistency and university precedent. So kind of break this down, balance of probabilities is what is the most likely thing that would have happened. So let's, for example, you have a ton of emails saying from a professor saying inappropriate things, or is being very blatant of that they graded your assignment in a way that is shown through the emails to be unfair, and you have that proof. And let's say your professor on the other side has no proof at all. There's a good chance that weighing that balance, that they should take yours into consideration pretty heavily because you have a bunch of proof and the other person has nothing. So looking at university precedent, that means in kind of like legal language that the university in these processes have to be looking at what has been done before. So let's say there are 20 cases that the school has dealt with about an unfair grade. And let's say your case is the exact same to these cases with circumstances. And all of those cases, let's say, had a very specific, had all of their grades reviewed by the professor again. If your scenario is the same to those scenarios, and you can prove that, then you shouldn't get a drastically different outcome than those students. And that's what precedence means. Okay, so looking specifically at policy 70A. So like I had mentioned, policy 70 gets a bit confusing because the policy does cover both petitions and grievances, and I'll discuss the differences between those. But sometimes, like I was explaining, an issue can be related to either a petition or grievance, but sometimes one route is a better path than the other. And we can help you kind of figure out what would be the best case scenario for you moving forward if you contact us and we have those advising appointments. So if you want to file a petition is for a student who is seeking exception or relief to rules at the university. So let's say you're dropping a course after a deadline. So for example, you know that you've missed a deadline and there was a deadline in place, you've missed it, and now you were looking to kind of get an exception. This is kind of where you would be filing under the petition, or reducing or increasing course load, or extending program times, missing an assignment deadline. So under a petition, again, it's where you acknowledge that the processes were fair, but given the circumstances of your case, you believe that you should be kind of given an exception from the rules. So that would be where you would file a petition. So how you'd fill this out, this process, is I will walk you through it, but we'll finish the slide and then I'll kind of walk you through it. As you would fill out a petition for exception to academic regulations. And this form is online and it's sent into the GSPA, which is Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs Office online. And one thing to mention is decisions under petition cannot be appealed. And so we'll talk about that a bit later, but this is a bit different from the grievance section. So I'm just going to go away from the slide to kind of walk you through a bit of the process. So I'm going to stop sharing. All right. You should be seeing an internet browser now. Hopefully that is the case. Okay, so let's say you're interested in filing a petition. You've had a deadline for dropping a course, you've missed that deadline, but you think given your circumstances that you should be granted an exception. So let's say you've talked to us and we say, okay, petition is the route to go. So let's find the policy first off. I personally think the easiest way is just to go through Google or your web browser to directly find it by just saying something like UWaterloo policies. You can go directly through the UWaterloo website, but I find this way to be quicker, quite honestly. So if you go UWaterloo policies, you will see this pop up here, most likely. You'll see policies, procedures, guidelines, University of Waterloo. You're going to click on that. And then it's going to kind of give you the option down here to how they're going to sort the policies that are going to come up on your screen. So I would say because today we know that we're looking for policy 70, let's just go with numerical order. So you click on that, and then you'll see all of the policies at the University of Waterloo. If you didn't know what you were looking for, you could kind of search for it. You can kind of read through them. If you're interested in looking at other policies, it might be worthwhile to check out this page to look at all of the policies we have. But for argument's sake, we know that we're looking today at policy 70 on petitions and grievances. So we're going to go down and click on petitions and grievances, and it will bring you to policy 70. If you wanted to find this directly, you could also probably just Google UWaterloo student petitions and grievances, and it would probably bring you to this as well. So as you can, I'm just going to move this away. As you can see, this is a very lengthy policy. Okay. So, which is why if you are having problems kind of understanding or navigating this all, please, again, feel free to reach out to us and we can help you navigate that. So I'll give you kind of the introduction, and just as a heads up as well, if you were a graduate student out of one of the affiliated colleges, some of these processes might be different as well, depending kind of, for example, like at Conrad Grable, it says petitions are handled under this policy and grievances are handled under this policy, but some of the other ones, like at St. Jerome's, it says petitions are handled under this policy, but grievances are handled under policies and procedures established at St. Jerome's. So if you are not on main campus, this is something you'd have to look out for. And if you are more interested in what the processes are for the unique colleges, then you can reach out to us again and we'll figure that out together. So let's say we already know that we want to file a petition. So this is what we've already talked about. So we will go down to Appendix A, which is the petition procedure, and it will prompt you to look for this section at the top of the policy as well. So as you'll notice under this petition procedure, you'll notice a section that is specific to undergraduate students. And then the second paragraph is specific to graduate student requests. So this is what we're going to be working with today. I believe the form might be different, but it might be handled a bit differently depending on if you're a grad student. So make sure you click on the graduate student form here. So you can find this form by clicking on it directly in the policy here, and you can also find it by, I believe, on the website. So if you look into a different form, you say grad forms UWaterloo, you should be also brought to, I believe, a GSPA page that also has a bunch of forms listed. So right now we're on this page, graduate studies forms, and you'll see a petition link here. So you can, again, find the form either through the policy directly by clicking here or by searching like graduate study forms. So let's say we're right in the policy still, and we decide, yes, we're a graduate student and we're looking for a petition specifically. So we're going to click on that, and it's going to prompt you to log in. So this specific form, unlike the other ones for some reason, this one is online. So it will prompt you to answer a bunch of things, attach relevant documents and send them in. So let's say, I'll show you kind of what the form looks like here. So it will prompt you to log in. Okay, so this is a form, and just to give you kind of a bit of an idea of what questions you'll be asked on this form in case you have to do it in the future. It'll ask you kind of what you're petitioning. Like for example, if your academics were affected by extenuating circumstances such as like a death or illness in your family. It's going to ask you for your student ID, your name information, email address. It's going to ask you for your faculty, your program, what terms the petition relates to. And then it's going to give you a bunch of questions that you kind of have to fill out. The specific questions are here so you can look at it. And you can look at this form without filling it out as well if you're kind of curious for future situations. It's going to ask you your desired outcome. So let's, for example, going back to the scenario where you've gotten a grade that you think, the deadline that you missed, and there was a death in the family, let's say you missed the deadline, and because of that circumstance, you would like to be accepted from the rule and have that deadline extended for you. You would put something along those lines here to be able to do whatever it is you wanted to do that you missed the deadline for. And you would explain in the next question what the circumstances were. So you'd explain why you missed the deadline and why you should be accepted. And then we have a timeline of events. So let's say if there is a death in your family, you'd have to kind of outline when that took place, when the deadline was, so they can kind of see how close in time that was for the scenario. And it will ask you kind of what supports you access. So these would be community sports that are off campus or on campus. So let's say during this time you access counseling services to help you through the grieving process of your lost family member. You would label that here. And then here, if it's applicable, in this scenario, it might not be as applicable for the example I was talking about, but in other scenarios, you would kind of outline what you would do moving forward. So in the scenario, if it's a family member issue, it wouldn't be super applicable. But if it was something about, let's say you were experiencing issues related to a mental illness, and you need some time to go talk with counseling services and do things related to that, maybe you could put here that you are accessing counseling services or something like that. And then it will also require you to add some documentation to support your claim. So just as a precursor, let's say you're looking for exception because of a disability or illness. You are not required to add any sort of medical documentation if you are not comfortable doing so. But you can if you would like to. If you are going to be sending in medical documentation, just as a heads up that if it is not in English or French, it has to be officially translated by a certified translator. Currently, the GSA is speaking with the GSPA about how some of those costs or the entire cost could potentially be covered, because that potentially is a cost. So we're looking into getting that waived. And another thing to point out here is if you are already involved with accessibility services, so accessibility services is already aware of your situation, then if you've already given medical documentation to them, they can actually provide it directly to the petitions process. So you don't have to go through that process twice, if that makes sense. And then, yeah, so I'll give you some more information and some acknowledgements of confirming the information, and then you can save it or you can submit it. So we will move on from that for now. And you'll be able to ask some questions at the end. And again, this is actually being recorded and will be posted. So I know this is a lot of information that I'm throwing at you. So, but if you want to go back and look at a very specific section at a later date, you'll be able to do that. So moving on to grievances. So as we remembered, the petitions were for a process where you acknowledge that the rules were followed on behalf of the university, but you believe that you should be accepted from those rules because of extenuating circumstances. In a grievance, the difference is in a grievance, you believe that the process was unfair. So, for example, you were given a grade for an assignment and you believe the grading was totally off, or you believe that you were graded, let's say, totally different from what the rubric was given to you. So for a grievance, again, if it was a student believes that an academic decision was made unfairly, they may file a grievance under 70B. So 70A is the petitions, 70B is the grievances. And to quickly go back to, oh, it's gone. So I will quickly. Let's go back to the petitions and grievances. So we have that. So the majority of this policy actually deals with grievances more so because it's a bit more complex. There's a lot of different processes involved, different contacts, and there's a large timeline. So that if you're thinking of filing a grievance, be sure to check out this timeline or get in contact with us at the GSA right away so we can help sort this out for you. But anyways, back to the grievances. So again, for examples of why you'd be filing a grievance, maybe you got an unfair grade, maybe you're being asked to leave your program for no reason, or maybe you have an instructor in a course and you get to the end of the course and they test you on things that was never taught in the course. That would be grounds to file a grievance. But if you are dealing with human rights violations, so let's say you've been discriminated against, those, even though it's related to grievances as well, those would be under policy 33 under ethical behavior. And this was a policy that was covered by myself a few weeks ago in a presentation, and that presentation will be covered as well. So if you're dealing with something along those lines, please feel free to check out that presentation as well. So again, if you're going to be filing a grievance, let's say you got an unfair grade, step one would be to make a request directly to whoever made the call. So let's say your professor gave you an unfair grade. Your first step in the process would be directly to contact that professor and ask for your grade to be reviewed. Okay, so let's say in the scenario, you reached out to the professor, you said, hey, I'm not fully sure I deserve this grade. Would you be able to review this and look at it again? Let's say the professor completely disagrees with you and refuses to look at your grade again, but you believe that it's still been treated unfairly. There are unofficial routes to go, which I will talk about in a few slides, but the next step in the official policy process would be to file a notice of challenge form and fill it out and give it to your associate dean. So going back to this policy, the grievance procedure is Appendix B. And you'll see notice of challenge form here, and you'll notice if you scroll all the way down, the policies are actually, the forms are all listed here as well if you don't want to find them throughout the document. And again, they're listed on that grad forms website if you just kind of Google graduate forms UW. And this will be the file here, so notice of challenge. And for some reason, the notice of challenge form and the appeals form that we'll be talking about later are not web forms. It will prompt you to open a Microsoft document, which you will have to fill out and submit via email. So this is kind of what the notice of challenge form looks like here. It's again, ask you for a lot of information, your address. It will give you kind of a preamble of some deadlines here and what the form pertains to. It's going to ask you to explain how you've been treated unfairly or unreasonably. It's going to ask you the relief requested. So let's say, again, going back to the issue of the unfair grade, you'd be seeking, let's say, for the grade to be dropped or to be reviewed. And then it's going to give you some things to agree to, like you've read and understand policy 70, and that you'll check your emails, et cetera, and then you'll sign here, date it, and send it off to your associate dean. So that's the notice of challenge form. So again, I noted that specific timelines have to be followed in this specific policy especially. Petitions, I think, are a bit more lenient, but the grievances and the appeals we'll see in a minute do have a bit more strict timelines. All right, so moving on to student appeals. So this policy, which is 72, you can appeal decisions made under policies 33, which is the ethical behavior policy that I mentioned a few weeks ago. You can go check that out again. And 70B, which is grievances. Remember, I only listed 70B here because you cannot appeal a petition. You can only appeal a grievance. So if you're in a scenario where you can either file a petition or a grievance, sometimes, not all cases, but sometimes it is best to take the grievance route, because in that scenario, you do have the option of appealing it if it does not work out in your favor. And then it also deals with situations under student discipline. All right, so reasons that you can file for an appeal. Let's say there is bias in the original hearing or case that you filed, let's say under your grievance, or you have new evidence that was not considered before. Let's say you forgot that you have a bunch of emails that helps out your case and you bring that forward. A procedural error was made. There was insufficient weight given to your evidence, let's say, or the penalty was unreasonable for the offense. This specific, the penalty one is mostly going to be dealing with the student discipline. So let's say, like, for example, a professor finds that you've cheated on an assignment and all of a sudden you're getting expelled from the university, and you file for an appeal. That's where that would come in if the penalty was a bit unreasonable given, like, for a first-time offense. So in this situation, you would fill out a notice of appeal form and submit it to either the chair of the Faculty Committee of Student Appeals or the University Committee of Student Appeals, and depending on the issue. And to be completely honest with you, this definitely, I would say, gets really confusing for students, especially because, I mean, every faculty has their own committee. The university has a committee, and it really depends on the situation you're dealing with, which kind of chair, which committee you'd be dealing with. So again, if you're not sure, feel free to reach out to us and we can figure out who the contact would be for that. So you'd be sending it into your faculty committee for issues like a grievance decision made under policy 70 or student discipline. You'd be filing it to the university committee, especially if it was under policy 33 on ethical behavior. So I would say if it's very academic based, and let's say your rights have not been violated, like your constitutional rights have not been violated, then it would be mostly falling under the faculty committee. But if let's say you've been discriminated against or something like that, then it's going to fall under this committee here. And there's even specific deadlines for that process as well. So what do I mean by the deadlines? So let me just quickly show you. So again, policy 72 is student appeals. Again, when you find this, it's going to be, you can tell by how small this bar is right here, that how long this policy is on the website. Super long. So this is what I mean. Where is it? Sorry. Yes. You'll see along different points in here, there's a bunch of different timelines. And you'll see this for the grievance processes as well too. When you go into these policies, it will tell you something along the lines of, 10 working days, you have to notify this person, and then they have specific amount of time to notify you back or get back to this person. So it kind of, I believe this timeline is in place so that the process has to be moving along. If you find that you are following the timelines, but the person who's supposed to be getting back to you in 10 working days is getting back to you in a month and a half instead, that's definitely a problem. Get in contact with us and we can help advocate on your behalf for that situation, because that should not be happening. All right, moving on to how we can help at the GSA. So remember that we are here to advocate for you. We're here on your behalf. We want to help you. So if you have issues, anything related to this or anything else happening on campus, please feel free to reach out to us. I'll give you the information at the end of the slide, the slides of how you can contact us. But we can help students figure out what the issue is and how to navigate school policies through confidential advising appointments. So you can contact us and we can set up a one-on-one chat and we can talk about what's been going on and what kind of actions you could potentially take. So for examples, we see a lot of like supervisor relationship conflicts or filing a grievance or petition, or even if you're just kind of looking for information on what resources are available on campus that aren't the GSA, we can kind of help talk to you about those resources. Like I mentioned right here, like for example, the Human Rights, Equity, and Inclusion Office. We can accompany students to meetings. So sometimes even there will be external reviews or investigations done in some serious cases, and we can even sit in on those to witness proceedings for you. And again, this is all confidential, and if you're not comfortable talking with us about something, or if you're not comfortable with us bringing the conversation forth to, let's say, our president or the GSPA, we won't do so unless you consent to that, or unless it's an issue where your life or someone else's life is in jeopardy. So yes, and we can also advocate directly on your behalf with your permission to other university bodies, let's say having discussions with the GSPA, we can do that. And other resources on campus. So again, your GSA is a great point of contact, so contact us again. You can contact your supervisor or course instructor, your department graduate coordinator, department graduate chair, your department chair, the Office of Graduate Studies and Postdoctoral Affairs, otherwise known as the GSPA, Accessibility Services, Human Rights, Equity, and Inclusion Office, and Counseling Services. And if you are unsure about how to get in contact with these people or who these people are, you can get in contact with us and we can help figure out who that contact would be for you in your department. And so here is some information, but quickly I want to show you some resources that you could access actually that are on our website. So if you go onto your web browser, you go GSA-UW.ca, click enter, you'll see our really cool looking new website here. And for access some help with the things that I've been talking to you today, if you go over to services and down to advocacy and support, click on that. And it's going to cover a little bit of blurb of what I've just been talking to you about. And I'll show you some things, some documents I have uploaded here for you that I think would be pretty helpful. So the first thing is the overview of UW policies. So here is just like a very brief 1-paragraph description about the process of some of the policies that we've covered today. So you'll see the policy 33 that we covered a few weeks ago. And then these are the ones that we covered today. So student petitions and grievances, which is policy 70, and then student appeals, which is policy 72. So this is kind of a bit of a just summary of what I just said, and that's available on our website for you to check out. And then we also have policy 73, which is our intellectual property rights policy, which may also be useful to look at it as well. And then going over to the next one, we have a useful policy flowchart for you that I have to, there we go. So if you're unsure of what your issue pertains to under which policy, or who you might be able to contact instead of going through the official policy process, here are some options. So you can check out this flow chart on our website, and you can see I've kind of broken it down to this. And over here with the ... lines, we have our kind of informal resolution. So let's say you're doing research, maybe you want to talk to your supervisor, or if you have a course, maybe you want to talk to your prof or grad coordinator. And then it lists some other people that would be some pretty useful, like the department chair, associate dean, your dean, the GSPA. And then these are the more formal processes. So here is the process for the petition and the grievance, all the way down to student appeals. And again, to really bring this home for you, the GSA can help you at any point in this process. We can help you right here, where you're figuring out what the issue is exactly. We can help you out here in who would be the first person to contact, and we can help you navigate this whole messy system here or the policies, and we can help you down here. So at any point in this entire process, the GSA can help you figure some stuff out. So please feel free to contact us. So again, here is some information. Our website again is GSA-UW.ca. If you want to make an appointment, I believe there's a contact form on our website, but you can also contact the office directly at GSA-office@UWaterloo.ca. And you can also contact me directly at GSA-wellness@UWaterloo.ca. So I believe now we are going to, if you have any questions, now would be the time to ask them. Oh, I believe for some reason I cannot. Hold on, everyone. Okay. I'm just gonna share my screen one more time with you all, if I can get back to. All right, technical difficulties, my friends. Okay, so I'll leave this on for now. So now would be the time, if you would like to ask any questions, to send them into the Q&A box, and I can look at those and answer those if you would like. While I'm waiting for those to pop up in the Q&A, I do have some in mind that might be useful. So one being, do I need to share medical documents for the petition? You do not need to, but I will say if the majority of your reasoning is related to a medical issue, it might really help your case to include that, but you are not obligated to include that. Another question would be, who is the best person to approach for these issues? And really my answer would be, it totally depends on what the issue is and overall who you're comfortable with approaching. Like for example, in the situation where I would have to contact my graduate chair, let's say in my department, I'm in sociology. Currently, my supervisor is actually the graduate chair in my department. So let's say if the issue that I was having was with my supervisor, which I'm not, my supervisor is awesome, but let's say it was happening and he was the graduate chair, then I might not feel comfortable approaching that role because that's a conflict of interest. So maybe in that scenario, I would contact the GSA or the GSPA or any of the other resources that I've mentioned. So again, there's a bunch of people that you could contact about this issue. And if you're not comfortable approaching a specific person about this, there are other avenues to take. And a bit of questions of kind of how long this process takes, depends on which process you're taking. But ideally, it would not take a long time, maybe a month. But to be completely honest, in a few cases, if it keeps going through different processes and different people, it can take a few months, especially right now during COVID. But if you find that people are not getting back to you during the process, as they should be following the timelines, if that's not happening, please get in contact with us and we can help figure out why that delay is happening. All right, are there any questions in the chat? Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. So thank you so much for joining us for today's session. If you would like to contact us again, I've put it up on the screen again. So again, our website is GSA-UW.ca, or you can contact our office to make an appointment, or you can contact me directly. So have a great day or evening or afternoon, wherever you are, and we hope to see you at our future events.